Get ready for Real Talk with Pasha B in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Real Talk with Pasha B. This is another, I'm going to say a quarantine podcast. And, of course, I have...
Coronavirus.
That's so
My
ghetto.
bad.
That's so ghetto. But y'all know that voice. That is Sheneka. Hey, Sheneka.
What's up? Hey, Pastor, what's going on?
I'm good.
What's going on, Pasha?
Hey, y'all.
We have Raphael back with us again. Hey, Raphael.
Hey.
How's your quarantine Sunday coming along?
I'm not dead, so I'm here.
That's good. Now, that's a good thing. And we also have with us Sam. Sam, how are you?
Hey, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this. I look forward to it. So,
I'm excited about this conversation. So today we're going to be talking to millennials. We are giving our millennials a platform to discuss things that are important to them. They're also hopefully going to dispel some of the myths that we have surrounding millennials as far as them being what? What are some of the myths you've heard about millennials?
Being stupid.
Yeah.
hard-headed,
Stubborn.
Stubborn. I'll say
very
unfocused.
stubborn. I'll say, very stubborn, unfocused.
Entitled?
I've heard
Entitled
entitled. I've heard
is a word.
lot.
Entitled is one.
Entitled
It is a
that
word.
I've probably heard the most.
It is a word I've heard the most.
I've heard the most is entitled for sure.
Can you all relate to any of those characteristics that have been used to describe your generation?
No, not really.
Honestly, I can.
Oh,
I can to an extent. Like I'm stubborn without a fault, but I'm also stubborn. I'm not stubborn without reason, I guess. Like, I'm not going to be just like willfully, pridefully stubborn. If I'm wrong, I'll accept it. But if I know I'm right, or if I know I have some ground to stand on, you're not going to be able to push me.
All right. We'll see with that. I can kind of understand, because not just based off of me being a millennial, I'm also a Capricorn. So we do happen to be stubborn about 98% of the time.
I'm an Aquarius.
So before we continue with the conversation, just for clarity, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Pasha, we are going to define millennials, because one of the things I think that's happening is we, as a society, we are confusing millennials with the Generation Z. So millennials are defined as those individuals who were born between 1981 and 1996, give or take a year or two. Generation Z, those individuals were born between 1997 and 2012. So all the people you saw down on spring break on your TV during the coronavirus outbreak, those were your Generation Z, right? Those are the individuals who are in college right now and younger. So again, millennials.
it was probably some dumbass. It was probably some dumbass millennials out there too.
No, they definitely.
You're probably right.
Absolutely.
They
weren't the bulk.
No, they weren't the bulk. They weren't the ones that we saw on TV.
No, those weren't the ones that were celebrating their 21st birthday,
right?
And nothing was stopping them from going to Miami,
right?
Yeah.
Lord, they were stupid.
So now that we have the definition of what a true millennial is, so we can visually, I'm going to say, Sheneka, thank you for that. So we can visually kind of know who we're dealing with. So we're not dealing with the people who broke the shelter in place and, social distancing rules right now. We're dealing with the millennials, but that also spreads across a certain age range as well. So with this being an election year, now that we've been impacted, I shouldn't say now that, but because we are being heavily impacted with the coronavirus, and there are so many other things, whether it be from jobs, whether that be from relationships, whether that also be from state and state but federally impacted laws that are coming into effect that could and is primarily impacting this age group as well. We wanted to hear, your thoughts and what did you feel about what was going on. So let's even talk about the election, because this is an election year. As you probably know, Bernie Sanders just recently dropped out of the Democratic race, or as a Democratic candidate. It was sometime last week. So with an election year, there are a lot of things that people need to identify as issues or concerns that they're looking for in a candidate when it's time for them to vote, whether they vote Democratic, Republican, doesn't matter what it is, but making sure that you're able to identify those issues that are going to impact you and understanding how to vote so that your vote is aligned with that candidate, or that candidate is running on that platform, or that's something that they are going to make sure that that's a priority to you. So again, with this being an election year, how do you guys even feel? Because I don't know how millennials process the whole election process, the electoral process. What are your thoughts about it being an election year? And then how, with the change of candidates dropping out, things of that nature, how are you processing all of that?
Well, I've been voting since I was 18, so I voted in the election for Obama, the election for Trump, and I'm not going to say that I'm a Republican. I'm not going to say I'm a Democrat. I'm more of an independent, meaning that I will literally sit there and look at both sides of the bridge, see if one side is good versus the other. Because, my parents, they always taught me, take a look at both candidates, see what they offer, see what they're about. And if they ain't about the same thing that you're about, doesn't vote for them. So the whole thing with Bernie, he should have stayed in the race. And I think that Biden shouldn't even made it. That's just my take on it in the beginning.
So with that said, because I don't think we want to kind of focus on the candidate, more so the
issues.
platform.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as particular issues, what are some of the top 2 issues that are important for you when voting?
Or even just because he said Bernie should have stayed, Biden should have not gotten as far. So what were the issues that you believe Bernie was advocating towards or was going to make a change in which you would even make that statement?
Well, the fact that he said some... Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I've seen people talk a big game for a long time. As a, Black person in America, civil rights issues have always been something that's been extremely important to me because it affects me the most as a human being and how I'm able to move freely in and out of society. And a lot of people talk a big game and stuff like this, but we see pictures of Bernie marching for civil rights from now going as far back as the 60s and 70s. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of one of those things where consistency, in the most part, in regards of where he stands on certain topics, which is why I kind of feel the way I do in that aspect, I think, type of deal.
I heard that from someone who probably, I'm going to say 20 years maybe older than you in regards to, not even, again, because we're not talking about the candidate, but the reason why they favored Bernie Sanders was because he maintained a consistent value, they believe, throughout his whole political career. So that was good. That was actually refreshing to hear you say that, because it sounds like at least you're being in tune with whoever it is that you're going to vote for. You're kind of being cognizant of that person's legacy even before they stepped up to run for, the presidency. So that's good.
Yeah, it's a madhouse out there. I mean, it's 100% just like, if it wasn't real life, I would think it was like a parody movie of something. It's just
It's
refreshing
crazy.
to see that there's somebody that, it's just refreshing to see somebody that still, cares about humans.
So with some of the things that the candidates are using as a part of their platform is immigration reform. Sheneka, I just drew a blank. Immigration reform, student loan,
Probably gun control.
gun
That's a
controls.
big one for me.
Yep, student loan, debt, things of that nature. Healthcare for all.
Healthcare, the living wage.
Yes. So what's
living wage? Absolutely.
So as Sheneka was saying, what would be, no matter who the candidate would be, what would be 2 top issues as a millennial that you can address with, that you knew whomever it was that you needed for them to be advocating or to make an impact with 2 particular issues?
Definitely healthcare. Okay. Oh, no. Definitely healthcare for me, and education, because I still have younger children. And as long as they're offering something that would actually help the children later on in life, I'm all for it. And definitely healthcare, because I'm sick, people are sick out there, and they need things that will take care of them in the long run. You got family members that are sick, you got kids that are sick, you got people on the street that are sick, and you want to see them taken care of in the long run.
Absolutely. And I just want to add on to that, Raphael. So just in researching, healthcare is one of the things that impacts millennial generations, and I will also say Generation X as well. But the research shows that the millennials are the least healthy group compared to other generations at that age. So when Generation X were at your age, we were healthier than millennials are now. When the baby boomers were your age now, they were healthier than your generation is now. So healthcare is something to consider as far as millennials are concerned. That definitely is a good consideration.
Definitely
So
agree
Samantha,
with that.
Samantha, you had mentioned civil rights. Is there another issue that stands out for you?
I would probably, it's hard to narrow it down to just 2. I think everything that Pasha stated earlier was exactly like right on the head of like things that politically wise are important to me to hear someone stands on. Like student loans, like as somebody who doesn't have children but did go to college and graduate and is paying them things back right now. Student loans.
Paying them things back.
Paying them things back right now. Like student loans is something that's very important to me, as well as immigration. I feel that nobody should be illegal on stolen land. So that's something else that.
Wait a minute.
Wow. Pow.
I feel as if like there's absolutely no reason why we should be looking at the things that we're looking at now. That's not fair. I feel as if making sure that yes, everybody has healthcare, making sure that everybody has food, just like basic human rights that people need to live, clean water, like just stuff that you would think that would the American dream, quote unquote, would be that everybody like pumps their head up to believe and everybody makes it to believe. Things that, you would think wouldn't affect this country are, and nobody's paying any attention to it. So I think that stuff like that, like environmental health, resources, like recycling, solar energy, like these are all things that we need to be looking at. We're depleting our Earth's resources. Like we're looking like the polar ice caps are melting. People are, you know what I'm saying? Like there's floods and all these like natural disasters that could be avoided if people just took the proper precautions to just like give back to the earth that what we take from it. Like it's not an infinite resource. So things like that are really what's like important to me, and I need to hear people's standpoints on, because ultimately, all of that stuff in a nutshell affects me, my family. If I decide to build a family, those children and those children's children, you know what I'm saying? Like, long run stuff. We can't sit here and just love all this prosperity and stuff that we get, and then 50 years down the line, it's like War of the World, and there's nothing left, and we're all fighting for water and killing each other. Like, it's all of this stuff could be avoidable if the proper precautions are taken, and nobody cares outside of just like making money.
Those are some good issues, and I'm glad that the environmental issue, that's a biggie, and I'm not even sure if that it's actually on the forefront of people's minds all the time, but you're 100% correct.
Nobody pays attention to it.
Nope, nobody pays attention to it, and if
nobody pays attention to it, and it's the most important.
It is, because no matter
you can't
what
do anything else on this earth, that there is no earth.
Right. Yep. All the other things that we're kind of advocating for, I think those are short-term goals or short-term issues, but I can't even say environmental issues are not short and long, because depending on, how you're interpreting the data and you're listening to the data, these changes, we're kind of in a period of crisis when it comes to that. And if we don't make changes like now, then the effects, because we're already seeing the effects, but that's not what people want to talk about. We're already seeing the effects. So 20, 30, 40 years when those effects are more visible, and you can't go back and say what you could have or should have did in 2020. No. We're
seeing it now during the quarantine. Like, rivers are starting to clear up, and you could take pictures of skylines, and there's no smog, and the air quality is better everywhere because everybody is forced to stay indoors at this point. Not that it's terrible that it's taken this to see that, but you would think that there'd be no way after all of this that we could just go back to normal.
And unfortunately, we are.
A lot of things have to change.
You're right.
And that's the craziest part to me.
Yep.
So it's like all of this stuff is it's the willful ignorance of like seeing pure stated facts, like scientific or not, like seeing it right there in front of your face and then just being like, meh.
Yep. All right, so we touched on that political. Let's talk about jobs. I know that for the process of just finding a job, depending on where you are, what resources you are exposed to and things of that nature, the approach to a job or securing a job, even the job that you've secured can look different for the different generations. So, the generations, I don't even know these damn generations the way that I should, but I'm gonna tell you, the people who 60 years old, their work ethic was different than our generation, different than the millennials and the Ys and the Zs and things of that nature. So where I think our generation, Sheneka, again, we're Generation X.
We're Generation X.
Okay. So the Generation X, I think, is a blend of the baby boomers, and is that our nearest one? You got to tell me, what are the generations, Sheneka? Come on now.
Oh my God, Pasha, keep up.
No, I can't.
So your ex and your parent is baby boomers.
So I was right.
Actually, the millennials have been raised by the baby boomers. In addition to some of us that are in the X generation, we've been raised by the baby boomers. So with that said, I think it's important to keep in mind what was going on during the baby boomer generation that kind of influenced how they raised us and the millennials, because that's a big piece that we don't take in consideration. And also,
100%.
Baby boomers are the primary ones complaining about millennials, but they raised them.
Right.
They raised them.
Did they raise millennials, or are they the grandparents of millennials?
It depends on where you are. And spectrum. So
Right.
so remember, so millennials, they range between the ages of 24 and 39.
Mm-hmm.
So baby boomers are those individuals. I want to say they're like 50 and above. So
Baby boomers,
depending on where you are
like
on the
46 to
spectrum.
64, I think.
Yes.
1946 and 1964, I believe the baby boomers are. So they're like 50 to 70 something.
Gotcha.
Like
Okay.
mid 50s, early
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah. So they raised the millennial generation. And one of the things to keep in mind, what was going on during their era, which contributed to them raising millennials the way they were raised. And also as millennials were coming up, what they were exposed to. So just to kind of give you some idea,
I love history.
boomers were raised, I shouldn't say boomer, apparently that's a derogatory term, baby boomers,
Yes.
not just boomers.
Not just boomers.
Yeah,
If they
they
can
had a
call
whole
me a millennial,
hashtag thing
I can
about
call them a
that.
boomer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize that was a derogatory term. I was like, okay.
You
But
said it
yeah,
right,
they were
boomer.
raised during the civil rights movement. Vietnam was going on. You want to talk about feminist movement. And when you talked about the work ethic, that was the golden age of manufacturing. And most of the baby boomers, they secured a job. They worked it for 20, 30 years, got their pension, got their gold watch, and called it a day. So that's very different from the employment or career environment that we're in now. So with that being said, what are your experiences as it relates to securing employment or even different types of career fields that you may be interested in, as opposed to things that your parents may have experienced? I know I've heard, even though I'm in the Generation X, I know when I was coming out of college, it was, okay, you're going to get a job, work 20 years. And it was like, no, that's not what I want to do. So I had a couple of jobs before I kind of landed where I am now. So I guess, Raphael, you can go ahead and elaborate on that.
Well, when it comes to these jobs, it all depends because I'd stay with a company for 8 to 10 years. And did I see longevity in it? No, because of the field that it covered and how much wear and tear it took out of you. Now, with some of these jobs, I'd say that if you can literally work in the office and kind of maintain something to where you're working hard, but not working too hard to the point where you're too tired to even maintain your family and a happy household, anything like that. These jobs, they don't cater to a lot of people that are married or a lot of people that are single. It's either or. Either you're single or you're married, and that job will look at you kind of differently if you show up there and you're single. You see what I mean?
So your approach on, because probably your bosses could be range from the Generation X to the baby boomers. Do you feel as though what I'm hearing you saying is that companies take this approach maybe because of, I'm not going to say because of age, but usually because of people who are in charge, whether they be, again, from the different generations of their workforce, they believe that their workforce should take on the same work ethics that they may be used to or the company standards that they're used to. And millennials are kind of known to want to explore, to basically, if this job isn't working out today, I could potentially get another job. So have you had any issues with, and I'm hearing that you say, or at least there could be some experiences with companies not understanding their current workforce and expecting something that may not be realistic depending on the diversity of the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, that I have had experience with that. And it's so funny that when you actually look at it and have to deal with it now, back to basically say our baby boomers. When they actually went for a job, they went in, had their resume, told them if they had any college experience, and they would be told, well, you'll hear from us in the next 2 or 3 days whether or not you got the job. Now, a lot of that doesn't matter. A lot of it is based on experience, but it's based on who you know now. If you know somebody that's within that company that's been there for 8, 9, 10 years, then you're more than likely to get that job. But if you just coming off of straight out of high school and don't know anybody and don't have any experience, you're not going to get that job 9 out of 10 times. And it's kind of sad because you have a certain work ethic based off of who raised you. But my parents, they raised me to believe, okay, you go in, you work 8 hours, you're not there to make any friends, you're there to get a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
But some have those work ethics where they're more like, all right, so I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go kowtow with anybody I know, I'm going to join the little clique, see how far I can get, and then see if I can get that promotion. And is it right? No, not really. But is it helpful in the long run? Yeah, because then you see certain things that can happen when you do all of that.
So the navigating the workforce is different. Okay, Samantha, I want to hear that.
Right.
I mean, when I say conflicted, I'm not saying like I don't agree with what you're saying, Raphael. It's more like how I look at it is, I mean, I guess, so I know a lot of millennials like have this like, or what they like to call, people like to call like a job hopping, quote unquote, mentality, where it's like you just go from bit to bit to bit to bit to bit. But to kind of touch on what Raphael was saying is like a lot of jobs don't really look at you different if you're married with children or if you're not, or something along the lines of that too. But I think what a lot of people also don't necessarily take into perception now is that things cost so much more now than they did when the boomers were coming up and getting out of college and starting their families. The cost of college tuition has tripled. The cost of living has tripled, and minimum wage is just now starting, is still stagnant from 15, 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just now people are just now having to have a conversation about raising it more because people still aren't making the money that they need in order to support their families, even with minimum wage supposedly being put in place to do just that. It's not covering enough anymore. So yeah, a lot of people do have this mentality where they have to get to something better or need to go elsewhere because a lot of people don't value the time, the effort, the work ethic, or anything along the lines of that coming from somebody. So yeah, if I'm putting in 40 hours here every 2 weeks and I'm like busting my tail, I'm super productive, but instead of not necessarily giving me a pat on the back, because that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is some other, like, the ability to be able, if I want to move forward, to go further up. Instead of what I've found is a lot of people, if you're super productive and you get a lot of stuff done, that you're a number to them and you start pushing these numbers. And then at this point in time, they're expecting this. And then when you don't produce that, then they start demoting you and then they start giving you less and less and having you do all this extra heavy lifting that, you know what I'm saying, or additional lifting to kind of make up for what they feel like you should be doing. And I don't necessarily think that, not saying I don't think it's fair. I just feel like a little bit more appreciation of the hard work that is input would go a lot further than punishing or making it harder for somebody to go elsewhere once you do realize that they're doing all this work and making you look good.
So it sounds
absolutely. So to your point, and I just want to, kind of add some context to what you were saying. So research has shown that the millennials are making 20% less than their parents' generation, and wages have not kept up with inflation. To your point, Sam, minimum wage has not increased since 2009. The federal minimum wage, which is $7.25. So that's over 11 years. It has not adjusted for inflation. And the generation considered the millennials, economically, they're also the first generation that's actually worse off than their parents' generation.
Than the previous. Yeah. Because all that money has been ran out and stuff like that. Like I was the other day, I was looking through my friend's mom passed away, and so she's going through all of her stuff and like found the yearbooks and we're going through, and you know how like at the end of the yearbooks it has like a year summary where it shows like, you know, how much a movie ticket was, how much a concert ticket was, how much a gallon of milk cost for that year, you know, stuff like that. And it was like a burger was like 59 cents. Like a gallon of milk was like 60 cents. Like you could get a concert ticket for like $13 in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to now where that same concert ticket would probably cost you $80 to $90, or that same gallon of milk is now $3.29 as opposed to like $1.05. Yeah. You know, and with that stuff costing more, but you're still bringing the same amount home that you brought home in 2009, that's crazy.
And it's so funny. This is off on tangent a little bit. So I was on social media scrolling, and you know how sometimes they those sponsored posts from different companies come up. So one of them came up from my old apartment complex. When I moved to Atlanta in 2002, I moved to Decatur, the straight hood of Decatur too, not north of Memorial Drive, but like south of Memorial Drive. Yes, and this was the apartment I moved to. I had a 1-bedroom apartment. I was paying $485, and it was 800 square feet. It was 800 square feet, and when I tell you that was cheap, and I was like, oh, okay, I can do this, but it was in the straight hood. The same apartment complex, which is still in the hood, is going for over $1,000 a month. For the same apartment that's still
$485 to over $1,000.
That's more than double. That's more than double. And minimum wage has not changed. And those people who live in that area may be making $10 to $12 an hour. So that's definitely something we have to take into consideration when we talk about not only the career choices, but also economics, because millennials are living at home a lot longer than the previous generation in an effort to save money, to pay back those student loans, just to be able to afford a place to stay. So those are some considerations I think we often overlook. Those are some considerations I think we often overlook when we start making these generalizations about the millennial generation. Oh, they're lazy. They don't want to leave home. You know, they're still at home with their parents. They can't take care of themselves. The way society is set up, they're just not in a position to do so. And kind of rolling into the next topic as far as not being in a position to do so, research shows that millennials are one, either not getting married or they're pushing off marriage to much later in life. So what are your thoughts around relationships, dating, marriage? Raphael, has the whole economic climate impacted? And I'm not sure your relationship status. What's your relationship status, Ralph?
I'm single right now.
Single. Okay, single right now. Same thing with you, Sam? Single?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Okay. Hey, we're going to make it do what it do. Has the whole economic climate affected or had any impact on how you date or your outlooks for marriage?
Well, when it comes to marriage, I kind of base off of how my parents' marriage is. They've been married for 39 years. So I kind of look at how they structured their marriage, how they have the relationship now, and how they treat each other as a whole. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for marriage. I got married when I was 22, and we would stay married for 5 years. Had 2 kids out of it, and then we got divorced. So I'm all for marriage. I'm all for dating with a purpose. I'm all for making sure that you can court the person that you're with, because you got to learn the person that you're with. If you don't know who they are, then you don't know who your future is going to be with. So with that being said, yeah, I'm definitely old school when it comes to dating. And with today's climate, as far as economic wise, it makes it a little bit more difficult to date now than it did way back in the day. Even in 2002, when I first got married, or when I first started dating my ex, I was making a whole lot more. And now that I'm no longer working there and I'm making just a little bit less, it makes it a little bit more difficult.
And you have children now, as opposed to back then. You didn't have that responsibility.
Exactly.
Got it. Sam.
Yes, ma'am.
Your thoughts around dating, marriage, is it important to you? Is marriage important to you? Has the economic climate affected how you date, how you navigate that space?
Yes and yes. Dating, well, actually, let me not say yes and yes. On the former part, is marriage important to me? I could give or take, to be completely honest. It was something that as a kid, I thought was important. You know, that's what you were supposed to do. But as I got older, I kind of started realizing that there's not necessarily more to life to it, but I started to become more, not fixated, but I started to focus more on building myself, if that made any more sense. Like I didn't want there to be any hindrance on who I evolved to as I got older. Like I understood that where I was at, I was in kind of like a cocoon stage where I was like building and nestling and, you know, trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, all this other type of stuff. So marriage ended up being pushed more to the back end and more towards not how can I find someone to share forever with, but more of how can I be the best person that I can be to then find somebody that's the best they can be, to where we can both together be better and grow from that as one.
I'm about to shout over here, Sam. Preach, girl, preach.
So that was where I was. And like, as for like the socioeconomic dating climate and stuff like that, like I just got out of a relationship that was not, we're not gonna talk about that. But we just got out of this, and it was a big eye opener for me. A lot of this time in quarantine has given me a lot of time to just, like create and write and reflect and kind of like go back in and find myself after kind of like feeling like it's been lost for a bit of time. So I realized I started saving more money and I started to be able to enjoy like my free time and heal the way I know that I needed to heal, but also learn the lessons that I needed to learn in order to not continuously continue to make that make that mistake again. So,
Got it.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Overall, do you think millennials find marriage important? Not even specifically about you, but your age group. Do you think marriage is important? Do you think relationships are important? Children are important? Or do you think, the primary focus for your age group at this point in time is to focus on self and to build as an individual?
I think that's where that cusp comes into play. Mm-hmm. Really, honestly, from what I've seen, that we were talking about earlier, where it's like, I'm a Gemini, but I'm also a cusp, so I'm a Cancer too, type of deal. I think that's where that cusp comes into play. Like to go back, Sheneka, when you were talking about the age range of millennials, where I fall, I'm on that ending cusp. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just made millennial by the skin of my teeth type of deal. You know what I'm saying? And what I've realized is I have a lot of friends who are in the earlier 80s range of the millennial gap. And to them, while growing is important, marriage is also something that's very much on their forefront and that they're looking for. And I found that more of the later millennials are more kind of focused on building themselves, and that relationship will come when it comes. Because I think also in retrospect too, a lot of us, you think about like when divorce rates peaked in the U.S., was like in the mid to late 70s, early 80s and stuff like that. You started to see more divorce rates. And so a lot of us have grown up, and not everybody has, like Raphael was saying, like his parents were married for like 39 years, and he's always had like that 2-parent home, that showmanship of love to hold and to see and to try to mimic and stuff like that. A lot of us don't, I don't want to say don't have that, but a lot of us had to kind of make our own assumptions around love and relationships outside of that nuclear family unit because it was split. Like, it's no surprise. Like, my parents divorced when I was very young. So I spent a lot of time, I was like 4 or something like that. So I spent a lot of time like back between like being with my mom as opposed to being with my dad and going back and forth through that. So I kind of had to make from what my parents were telling me was the important part of love and what I've seen outside and around from other people, I kind of had to make my own understanding of that from there.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important to emphasize, one, Raphael and Sam, you all on different spectrums of the millennial age range. So Sam is in her late 20s and Raphael is in his mid to late 30s. So that's a dynamic to take into consideration. And also, Sam, I think you brought up a very good point. Millennials as a whole, they more than likely grew up in either single parent households or they were the product of like a divorce. So what they saw growing up might have been, well, not even might have, it was a little bit different than what previous generations saw as it related to the family dynamic. Now, however that looks, because I know there's a lot of conversation surrounding, these people, they've been married 30, 40, 50 years, but we also know that dynamic might not have been a good dynamic. It was just traditionally for that generation, they were, they just stayed married and they didn't think divorce was an option. Not that it was the best marriage, but they just didn't see it as an option. So their perspective on marriage is a lot different from what your perspective on marriage may be. So that's definitely something to take into consideration as far as what you saw.
Well, I think that there's a lot of
almost unheard of for. I think it's almost unheard of for baby boomers and their parents, where they saw their parents getting divorced. I think that was kind of frowned upon.
Yeah,
whereas
right
now it's like
in that, like women being able to actually. I mean, like, obviously, we still don't make anywhere close to near the amount of money as a man does, but with women gaining rights and being able to do things like vote and provide and not necessarily, you know what I'm saying? Like, women started to be able to gain their own independence to where back, like, baby boomers and things like that, like, marriage was almost a necessity for them at that point. You know what I'm saying? In order to, you know, survive, like, women were not saying that everybody was doing it, but a lot of women were going to college not to get a degree, but to find a husband, you know? And so out of necessity, you hear a lot of people like, well, women don't stay with their men like they used to. It's like, yeah, grandpa and grandma may have had like a 70-year marriage, but guess what? For 25 of those years, he was cheating on her, and she couldn't do anything. So she had 4 babies to raise.
We ain't gonna talk about this. We ain't gonna talk about that one. No, I'm gonna change the subject. I've been letting y'all talk for the last 30 goddamn minutes. We're going to get back on. We're going to get because, but I can say that I'm noticing a lot of where I thought I may have heard a lot of outliers in maybe the millennials' thought process. I'm actually hearing that with these two individuals, that their experiences in life kind of mimic the experiences of people across different generations. So there isn't that much of a difference. I think it's specific to individual, of course, based upon their experience. But I'm not hearing too much of a difference from, the millennial standpoint. There is some variance across probably to a Generation X, but I am hearing that there are some variables from the millennials to the baby boomers and maybe other generations. I want to ask a question because I know last year was kind of a high profile year, especially in the state of Georgia, but in other states as well, in regards to a bill that was proposed, and it was called the Heartbeat Bill. I believe in Georgia, it's the HB 481 bill, I believe. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But the Heartbeat Bill, in essence, defines what it is legally, the definition of, I'm going to say, a child. And then it aligns certain things that each parent, whether that be mother or father, is entitled, responsible for, things of that nature. And it allows for the government to intervene and say, at this point in time, there can't be a pregnancy. It aligns that says that at this point in time, there is a responsibility, usually geared towards the father, of financial responsibility of the fetus and things of that nature. So it sounds like you guys are familiar with the Heartbeat Bill. I'm curious to find out what your opinions are in regards to the bill and how it could possibly impact you.
Well, when that bill came out, I really... That's kind of a slippery slope, because with certain things, financially wise, as a father, I take my responsibility where it is. However, on the other end, when it comes to telling a person they can't have children or they shouldn't have children or anything like that, nah. I mean, the government shouldn't be allowed to even have that kind of power when it comes to the personal thing. They do it in China. You literally have people that will have children, and if they don't have enough girls, if they don't have enough boys, they'll tell you, hey, look, you need to stop. You're done here. You're done here. But that's not something that we can actually live here in the United States and do, because we're in the land of the free. And it's not free to tell somebody they can't have children.
And I just want to expound just a little bit on regards to the point where I said financial responsibility for the father. So I want to say that the bill, and I don't have it in front of me, but I did kind of read it, that once that there is a heartbeat that's detected, that that child, that fetus, I'm going to say, can be considered a person / child from a legal standpoint. And fathers could be legally responsible for medical bills and things that may encompass, whether it be through the pregnancy up to birth, you're partially responsible for that child. So usually a woman doesn't even find out that they're pregnant. It varies, but I don't know if anybody kind of knows that they're pregnant before a 6-week mark, and I think that's what they use as the timeline, that at 6 weeks, the fetus is considered a person, and then by law should be susceptible to certain things happening in this bill. So at 6 weeks, women usually don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. So once there's a heartbeat that's detected, the fetus is a person, and then this law would allow for people not to do certain things at that time frame, and then also be responsible for certain things. So as a male, knowing that, let's say situation happened, whether it was on purpose, yes or no, and you got a young lady pregnant, heartbeat bill said that at 6 weeks, or the detection of the heartbeat, is when you are financially responsible for that child. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm for it. Still, regardless of how they word it, I'm still for it, because if you were responsible enough to lay down and have sex with said person, then you're also responsible enough to handle the responsibility of what comes after. So if it's financial, hey, go ahead and put on the insurance. If it's definitely if it's financial, put on the insurance. Make sure that you go to all the doctor appointments. Make sure that they're covered when they go to the hospital at the very end of that, and anything that's postpartum. Mm-hmm. I agree with it.
Okay.
Got it. Sam, and I'll ask you this. So this conversation came up because Pasha and I were talking, and one of the things that we've determined, not only with this particular bill, but with the vast majority of different political issues, you have a group of people making decisions for other people, and those decisions don't affect them whatsoever. So me and Pasha, we sitting around talking, and at the end of the day, like, the heartbeat bill don't apply to me and Pasha. You know?
Speak for yourself. I'm young, honey.
How about this? We have resources. Like, whereas younger groups of people may not have resources available to them to explore all the options that's available. And I'll just say it like that. Is this a topic of conversation when this bill came out with your age group? Like, was this a topic of conversation that you all discussed about how you all felt about the heartbeat bill and the government making decisions for you all?
How would it impact your life?
How it would impact your life as far as limiting your options.
So just make sure I understand the question before I answer. You're trying to figure out, like, amongst me and my friends in this conversation, like, how we feel or how we spoke about other people, like, making decisions in regards to our bodies and our autonomy. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're asking? Okay, cool.
That's the gist of the conversation. Because at the end of the day, the lawmakers the vast majority of the people who support this bill,
they're not reproducing. They're not reproducing. They're outside. They're probably out.
Reproduce either.
Right. They're probably outside of that time in their life in which reproduction is not on their high list of things to do. So with millennials going on down, this is a primary topic for you. You know, you guys are in the age group where you're thinking about relationships, thinking about kids. That's your primary focus at this point in time. So when you heard about people who didn't even come back to that age group, or didn't even probably even take into consideration the concerns of that age group, and making this bill that said you can't do this, and they're not a part of what you guys are have going on. They're outside of that. Was this something that your friends, your families, people in your age group sat back and was an uproar about? Or did it go over your head? Did you not realize how it was going to impact you? Or were you just like, okay, this is just another law that was made, so cool, we just got to live with it?
Oh, no, we were furious. We were furious. We were furious. I still am furious, to be honest with you, for a number of reasons. Regardless of what my views on whether or not a woman should be able to do with their body, it is my number one, I guess, outside of, being able to do whatever I want with what I have. My major concern was, and what I kept hearing, of course, amongst of a lot of my friends as well, too, was kind of like the disregard for longevity. And when I say that, it's like, okay, so most people, like you said, Pasha, most women don't know that they're even pregnant that early. Like, there's very few pregnancy tests that even test for that early pregnancy hormone like that. So, okay, so you take that right away. All right, so now I know I can't sustain this child, but I'm now forced to have this child. What's the first thing that the same politicians that put this law in order, what's the first thing that they love to say specifically about Black women is that we're welfare queens, right? That we have all these children that we can't afford, that how their tax dollars are going towards federal funding, Social Security, food stamps, WIC, all these things that these single parents that you're now forcing to have more children that they financially can't take care of. But on the ending point, this school, like, okay, so maybe, all right, so you say, all right, well, if they can't provide for them themselves, then just adopt or give it up for adoption. The orphanages are full. And who a good majority of those people are people or children who are A, Black, and B, they're too old to be adopted because everybody wants babies. Nobody wants anybody that, 5, 6, 7, let alone 13. If you hit teenager and you're still in the foster care system, good luck starting you off in this cycle of poverty and abuse again. So when you end up in this same situation and it continuously goes, you have these same people who can't get voted out. So the same person that voted against your mom having the ability to choose whether or not she was able to have you is now telling you also have to do the same thing. Either put your child in this one left lane where they can be put in a house full of people that don't care about them, or they can be put in a house with a foster parent who has 6, 7 other foster kids and is only doing it to get the check. Not everybody is doing that, obviously, but it's more likely than the child actively getting the care and the love that it needs, and that mother as well getting the care and love and the providing of that stuff in the long run. Yeah. Nobody pays any attention to that. It's just right now, X, Y, and Z. Well, there's a heartbeat. So if there's a heartbeat, I should be able, as soon as I find out I'm pregnant, I should be able to claim it on my taxes. I should get a security number. I should be able to, like, all of these things. So it's like, okay, that stimulus check, all of that stuff, yeah, I should get credit for my unborn child if that's the case then. Nobody is thinking, they're not paying. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody is giving that information back. It's like, all right, so is this a child with a heartbeat? Because then at that point, it should be able to have the same rights and abilities as a child. I should be able to claim it. I should be able to go down to the food stamp office at 4 months and get food stamps for me and my child.
Preach.
Well, and I agree.
Because that is a human being at this point. point in time. But no, they don't want to fund that. They want to pull money from that. They want to defund Planned Parenthood to where abortions are not the only things that are happening over there. Women are getting low-income gynecology exams. They're getting birth control so that they can actively not have to deal with this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of these things that nobody is thinking about the longevity of, they're just thinking about it right then and there. It's so like all the precautions are cool on the guy's end to keep from getting pregnant. Vasectomies are covered in insurance. So is the pill. So is Viagra. That's also covered under insurance. But you have to fight tooth and nail to get birth control covered. Or you have to, you know what I'm saying? You have to fight tooth and nail with your insurance company to go to Planned Parenthood to get, you know what I'm saying? Or go to these other places that are outside, you know, these low income places. They're not trying to give the funding and the money in order to get that type of situation done. So like, what gives? You're either going to make me have this child, but also give me the resources that I need in order to protect and love and provide for it. Or you're going to give me the ability to not have this child and be able to provide for myself for what I have right now. It can't be, there's no.
It's one or the other, or it needs to be all, but they're making it one or the other.
You know what I'm saying?
And actually this, I'm glad you brought something up. This bill also, it dictates when a person can actually have an abortion and under what circumstances. So I know.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
This me.
I'm gonna. You need to read this. So in regards to, and it may not affect you as a male, but it could affect if you have a daughter. It could affect.
Absolutely.
It could affect.
It affects his pockets as a male because he's going to be financially responsible.
No. The point that I'm bringing up is this bill tells a woman when she can have an abortion, such as if she was raped, right? Then, and she finds out that she was pregnant after a certain period of time, then this bill could probably eliminate the fact of an abortion being available to her.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
And also gives her rapist financial liability and rights over the child as well.
And technically, I think that's why the heartbeat bill came about.
Because people ain't got shit to do.
The heartbeat bill.
There it is.
Honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why it came about, was because you kept hearing about situations where somebody was raped and they got pregnant and nothing was being done about it.
Well, no.
So they came about with that heartbeat.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. So that's why I'm thinking they came about with that heartbeat bill because of that. Well, don't get me wrong. Go ahead.
No, the bill doesn't. From what I've read about the bill doesn't actually protect the person who was raped. The bill kind of exposes the person who was raped to things that they shouldn't be exposed to, such as if someone violates your body and rapes you. I don't think that this person should have a say so in anything that you do in regards to the effects of that. That was a criminal act that this person, did to you. So no, I don't want you. It's so, the bill is so, I don't know who was sitting down in a 4-wall room, white walls, sitting in a hard ass chair.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like there's something about this where, and if you look at the people, the demographics, the race, the age of the people who actually voted for that bill, I will say that one of the things that's stingingly painful is that they, I believe, did not have the appropriate people to have a seat at that table. The people who was actually being impacted by that. I don't know what the purpose of that bill was, but I will say that it's harmful for most people. And again, the people that are in the reproductive stages of their life, those are the ones that are primarily impacted because it takes options away from everybody, whether it be male or female. Me and Sheneka, we had a discussion before. I think we had a podcast, and we talked about the male perspective in regards to not having so many options when it comes to reproduction when a person is pregnant. So I'm not talking about his reproduction. I'm talking about the fact that if you hook up with somebody, whether it be girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, whatever, and that person, the woman becomes pregnant, y'all are pregnant, but let's say it's a one night stand, and the decision, women always have the decision whether to terminate or carry. The man doesn't have too much say so in it. He can he can give his opinion, but at the end of the day, the woman is going to be ultimately responsible for the last decision that was made. And if he actually said that he didn't want to have this child and she goes ahead with it, then he's responsible for it as well. So it's some.
Honestly,
Say that again.
Pastor, that's a whole nother podcast we about to start.
No.
Yeah, I think honestly, I agree. That was very. I didn't really think about it until you said it right then and there, but it comes down to literally being in a situation where somebody has the opportunity to tell you what exactly it is that you have to do without taking into account the psychological torment, the trauma that's inflicted in regards of that. And that's kind of what like burns me the most, because it's like you've already violated someone in the most violating of ways to literally snatch someone's autonomy from them, their right to speak, their right to consent, their right to, to
choose, to choose,
be heard, to listen, to choose, like to have that snatched is already something that is so just violating and degrading, and then people don't make it any better. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they find out about it, it's either you might get some sympathy, but you're going to get a whole lot of, well, what did you do?
Right.
And you have to deal with that. And that has a lot of psychological wear and tear on a person, too. So then to also come from that and be forced to not only have to carry this child, but then look this child in the face every day as a constant reminder of the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
The
choice. I think it's all about the choice being taken away, and allowing people not to be able to choose what's going to happen with their body and being responsible for the choices that they kind of make. So we're
and I also want to just add real quick before I know we're about to wrap up, but I think also the lack of consideration given to those things that may put women in a situation where they have to make that decision. Like, as a whole, mental health, we don't invest in mental health. We don't invest in education. We don't invest in going back to the living wage as far as putting people in a position where they can afford to live decently. We don't invest proactively, so that when people find themselves in this particular situation, we're trying to dictate, or limit their options when we didn't do enough on the front end to invest in preventing that situation from occurring in the first place.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we've gotten to the
on period.
We've gotten to the end of this podcast. We were able to have some great conversation today. So I want to say thank you to Sam and Raphael for joining us with this millennial discussion.
It's been my pleasure again.
Absolutely. I had so much fun. This was amazing.
Thank you. And I hope
it was very refreshing, I will say.
It was.
And I hope this is not the last time we hear from you guys. Quick takeaway is that it doesn't sound like there's a lot of differences between us and them, meaning Generation X and millennials. So next time you have a millennial around you, the next time you have a millennial around you, I'm going to say take some time to sit down and talk to them and actually listen to what they're saying, because it doesn't sound like we're speaking too much of a different language. Seems like we're all saying the same thing. All right. So again, until next time, again, thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.